I'm Adam Parness, and I'm a CGO.
Always saying guitars are playing a part of who we are. Got a cool job, but there's so much more to the chairman and women of the pedal board. You're a CGO, Chief Guitar Officer.
The show where success meets guitar.
Welcome to Chief Guitar Officer. I'm Scott Haidt.
And I'm Judd Silver. Scott, I think you would say that streaming services are here to stay.
Absolutely, they're here.
It took us a while to get to this point. Started out completely the Wild West. Nobody knew what was going on, how to navigate that. Then it really evolved into what we have now.
Our guest this week actually knows all about that.
He's a guitar player to begin with. He started out playing as a studio musician, understanding the ins and outs and inner workings of the recording process as a music producer, playing on people's records. Then he made the interesting pivot to become a streaming service executive. So he went into the world of streaming services, but with the knowledge and background of how do I protect songwriters' rights? How do I protect creators' rights? And knowing the ins and outs of both sides of that coin, kind of the gray area. And he's been very successful as an advocate for songwriters' rights and creators' rights while being successful in the streaming services world. Tell us who our guest is.
Our guest is Adam Parness. And guess what? He's a CGO.
Music consultant, trusted technology advisor, friend to songwriters everywhere, and CGO Adam Parness. Welcome to Chief Guitar Officer.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here. Lovely to meet you guys.
It's great to see you. What is your day like today, Adam? What are you up to today?
What am I up to today? The fun thing about what I do is that no day is ever the same. That's been a constant theme of my career, even, during the time that I spent inside digital music services. And I've been running my consultant business for a little over 5 years now. And that's one of the beauties of it. The work is super global. There's a diverse array of clients that I work with, and no day is ever the same.
What are the types of projects you're doing?
The crux of my work really focuses on improvement of songwriter livelihoods and the music publishing community. So a lot of what I do is advising music rights holders all around the world on their relationships with digital music platforms and other users of their music. And what I essentially do is advise them on the deals, the relationships, with the top line goal really of making improvements to the health of, songwriters' livelihoods, the music publishing community as a whole. So that's everything sort of centers around that. I advise the financial community a lot because as I'm sure you've heard, there's a lot of just given the way that the music rights business and the music streaming business has been performing for the last 10, 12 years or so. There's a lot of interest in investing in companies and catalog. And then I get to work with a lot of global brands who want to work with the music business. Some of them are kind of like on the periphery of the music business, but they need music strategy advice, sometimes licensing advice, really for the network and the knowledge and knowing that I can help them get to market or something. And it's great. And like I said, it's all really engineered around doing the right thing by writers and publishers and improving their livelihoods, economic or otherwise.
Very interesting. So going back a little bit, I know that you have a long history with the streamers, particularly the Spotifys and the Amazons. Can you talk a little bit about what led you up to this gig?
The fun thing about my career, fun to me anyway, is that, people take different paths in, and my path in really just came from my own background as a professional musician, primarily in the recording studio. So I spent the late 90s, most of the 2000s until the mid 2000s or so. I was a recording studio rat. I was in the trenches with songwriters. I was a producer, engineer, session musician, primarily guitar on sessions. And I loved it. 20-year-old version of me thought I'd spend my whole life producing pop and rock albums and whatnot, and did for a while. But I started to get burnt on the studio scene in the mid 2000s or so. And that was when, post Napster, the industry's in decline and all the studios and the bigger studios in New York were starting to close up shop and whatnot. And I was looking for a pivot. And it was around that time when I started getting really excited about music streaming. It was nascent at the time, and we're talking, pre-iPhone, pre-App Store, couldn't get onto the iPod, right? But I got excited about it because as a performer and a producer and someone who worked very closely with songwriters in particular, it was just sort of obvious that like this is the way the music business is going to go. Like as a fan, even just like $10, everything in your pocket, ubiquitous. Like it wasn't quite there, right? There were catalog restrictions. It was obvious ubiquity restrictions at the time, but I got excited about it. And, I kind of looked at what were different people's entries to the music business at that time. And at that time, it was a lot of MBAs, a lot of lawyers. That's what the music business was looking to hire a lot of, particularly on the rights holder side. And that's cool. We need all of that. But I felt that particularly if I went into the streaming side of things, which a lot of people just weren't interested in at the time, it seemed like a unique angle. So I went into streaming in 2006 or so with my background and what was my game plan, right? I was going to be the guy inside the streaming services that was in the trenches, in the recording studios, up 24-hour sessions with writers, with other producers, and really understood what was important to the creative community and do it early on in music streaming and make a big bet on that. But I was genuine about it. It was always something that was important to me. It's obviously something that's still important to me.
And I think a lot of the artists, especially, coming from a production and songwriting background myself, knowing that there's somebody inside like that. I think a lot of artists at the time didn't know that and probably still don't to this day, that there is somebody on the inside with that kind of background who has really looking out for their best interests. So it's really interesting that you had that foresight to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, totally. As I sort of got further and further on in my career, I met more and more new people in my network who didn't know my history and didn't know my background. Like, yeah, there were definitely a couple of like songwriter rooms that I walked into where, depending on the company I was at, I sort of got, greeted with a little bit of like a healthy dose of polite skepticism. I never take offense to that type of thing. I'm happy to walk into a room and prove my worth of being there and let someone sort of see things for what they are. And, the opinion always was like, all right, yeah, he gets us. Yeah. He puts his money where his mouth is. And, he's not going to do things that are terrible to the writing community. But also he comes from that. I get it. I've been there.
I think that's a common theme that we're hearing. I think if you have that passion and you're rooted in that, it absolutely brings so much more credibility to that. And when people warm up to you, it's probably even more rewarding.
Absolutely. And you can't fake it. I mean, that's also a constant thread throughout my career is that I just put out what I genuinely believe about any other situation. And like, for better or worse, you can't fake it, right? And I think particularly with the songwriter community, they've got, a finely attuned radar bullshit detector, whatever you want to call it, right? So, they have a unique sense, and rightfully so, of like who's coming to them and genuine about whatever it is that's being spoken about. And I always try to put that forth because, frankly, I don't know any other way.
You've had all these really amazing experiences. You've come through the business, and you're really thinking about rights, artist rights, and songwriter royalties, et cetera. With all this experience of meeting people and seeing people and working in these different businesses, tell us about ways how you've all collectively taken that to maybe try to help others and giving back.
So mentorship is important to me, right? And that was one of the things I always loved when I was at the big, streaming services is, I ran in some cases, particularly at Spotify, like rather large teams, right? And there's just, great opportunities when you're inside companies like that to mentor, new executives and whatnot, and help bring people up. When I initially went on my own, I had a little bit of a concern of like, am I not going to be able to do that? Or can I find new ways to do it? And one of the good things about what I do is, work with a lot of different companies. I have been able to find ways, even just within my own client base, of, helping mentor people. And, that's been part of the charge of like, we're bringing in a certain new executive, show them the ropes, help them get situated, let them learn from you. And then I try and, mentor musicians as much as I can, even still to this day. I try to make as much time as I can for people to help them out.
That's great. So obviously going back to your days, thinking back to your days as a studio musician, you mentioned production. There's obviously one thing here that got you set on this path and on this track, and that's the guitar, right? Can you go back to your earliest memory of when the guitar became that all-powerful thing that you just had to get involved with?
Yeah, absolutely. So it actually predates me playing, like when I actually started taking lessons by about 2 years. I want to say about 8 years old. And I had I was in summer camp and had broke my leg, broke my knee playing kickball. The first sign of hey, athleticism may not be for you, kid. And I was in the hospital overnight with my leg in a traction to avoid an operation. And I remember being in the hospital and watching the TV, and for some reason, like, it had MTV, and the Ozzy Osbourne tribute album. It's a live record that's a tribute to Randy Rhoads. I think it was, I want to say, probably like the 5th anniversary of his passing.
Okay.
And I just remember the Crazy Train video, the live video, and I'll never forget, like, I think it's a black and white video with the train tracks and like the Randy Rhoads polka dot flying V.
Yep.
Moving along the train tracks, and like that just like blew my mind.
Wow.
The song, the imagery, the flying V, everything.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then lo and behold, my mom's best friend at the time shows up in the hospital to visit me with the cassette of that record.
Wow.
And I just wore that thing out. I mean, to this day, I love Randy Rhoads, and I will say that the live recordings on the tribute album are way better than the studio versions on Blizzard or Diary, and maybe that's the significance of it to me too as well. But that was about 2 years before I started playing, so that sort of set me on the path. And maybe I was a little too young at the time, but like that sparked the seed. And then just like over the next 2 years of heyday of like late-ish era 80s rock, and very much seeing Eddie Van Halen and going deeper into Randy Rhoads and Queensryche and other bands at the time. Then the other big thing was I had a 5th grade teacher. It was his first year teaching, and he brought a guitar and an amplifier into class on the last day and played for us and did 2-hand tapping and all that. And my dad, God bless him, I want to say like within like 24 hours of that experience had me at the local music store, which is still open to this day. It's a great store called Old Music in New York, and bought me my electric guitar starter kit. It was this ugly ass banana yellow. I don't even remember the name of the brand of it. I just remember there was like a pyramid of guitar stands with this like beginner guitar, like $100, like every neon color imaginable of the day. For some reason, I went to the yellow version.
The 80s, right? The 80s.
This is 1988 at this point. Yeah, like a small practice amp, a curly cord, and had me signed up for lessons that commenced the next week. I still talk to that guitar teacher regularly. 40 years later, I took him out to dinner the other night for his 70th birthday.
Oh, wow.
I know we find the heroes that we love and worship. Like you saw the Randy video when the record came out with Ozzy holding Randy up on the cover of the album is
absolutely,
right? But I think my point was it's kind of these local heroes really impact us. So like your teacher doing that.
Yeah. And that moment with my 5th grade teacher, I mean, it was literally the last day of class. Like that was the treat for getting through the end of 5th grade. We probably got to eat cake and watch him play guitar. But you know what it was? I haven't thought about it in a while, but the reason that moment, I think, got me to go home and be like, Dad, Mom, I want to play guitar, was that it was real. It was the first time I was ever in a room with an amplified electric guitar. I had seen it on, videos and whatnot, but hearing, what was probably a 2-hand, he was probably playing Eruption or something like that. I vividly remember him 2-hand tapping. Seeing that, 10 feet from my face was like mind blowing.
So, all right. So we're talking about his guitars. I see some pictures of guitars behind you. Maybe it's time to share one of your guitars.
Yeah, by the way, this is like the hardest show and tell ever. This is like harder than, picking my favorite child or whatnot. Which also makes sense because I've only got one of those and well more than one guitar. So I chose this for a reason. Is it my favorite guitar? Maybe something of a 6-way tie, yes. But the way I try and judge my favorite guitar is like if the house is burning, which one should my wife or myself grab on the way out. This is at the top of the list. And the reason I chose it too is that it correlates to the very beginning of my career in music streaming. So this is a Fender Eric Johnson Stratocaster.
Oh, great.
Nice.
Circa, it's from the very first run. So I want to say this was made in like 2004 or so. So I guess it makes it 20 years old. It does not look 20 years old. I babied this thing. And, you know, on my guitar journey, I became a big Eric Johnson fan. And probably for about 10 years before the good people at Fender started making this thing, I was like, you know, signature guitars weren't what they are now, where everyone has one. But you know, that was sort of like my big dream was like, oh, Fender made an Eric Johnson Stratocaster. That'd be so cool. And then they finally made one, and I coveted it for about a year. And then what happened was so this lines up directly to my pivot when I was sort of leaving the recording studio scene and going into my first music streaming job, which was this company called Rhapsody. I got hired and I got a big whopping $5,000 signing bonus, which at the time to me was like, whoa, big money. And I took like half of it after taxes. And I was like, I'm going to go to Guitar Center and I'm going to buy this thing. Yeah, this is it. I mean, it's a Fender Eric Johnson Stratocaster. I think it's the best, you know, production line guitar that Fender's ever made.
Wow.
I've got custom shop strats and this thing absolutely keeps paces with it.
So cool. So is that based on like a 57 would be an Eric Johnson?
That's exactly right. Yeah. It's a 57. It's a slight V. Some people describe it as chunky. It does not feel chunky to me at all. Yeah. It's the perfect guitar for me. I don't have giant hands. I don't think Eric Johnson does either. Even if you're not an Eric Johnson fan, I don't even know who Eric Johnson is. Like, this is just like the best Strat I think that Fender has ever made. You know, even after I hung it up in the studio, I would still go in here and there and play on friends' records. And
cool.
I still had a band going and whatnot. Yeah, so this thing has been on like more sessions than I can remember.
That's
and it's
great.
been, you know, toured regionally and lots of gigs and doesn't seem to show any of the wear.
It's a great guitar, man. So, Adam, where do people find you? If people want to get in touch with you, connect with you, where's the best way?
LinkedIn, really. I'm easily findable on LinkedIn, and that's the best way for people to find me.
Thank you for being a wonderful guest. We know that there's a lot of songwriters and creators out there that really need these rights advocates and people supporting that. So it's good to know that you're out in the world and doing these things, especially from within the organizations. Really important work, and we thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, guys.
That's our show. Thanks for watching. And remember to like and subscribe to our channel. Check us out on all the socials at Chief Guitar Officer.
And we want you on the show. Go to chiefguitarofficer.com, look for the section called You're a CGO, send us your video, and be featured on a future episode. Just like this.
Hi. Yeah. I'm Sky Wilson, also known as Sky Livelihoods. I'm from Long Beach, California. I am a music teacher at a school called Rock Stars of Tomorrow in Huntington Beach. I played a few bands, one of them being the Purple Band, A Bleeding Sky. And in that band, I play this guitar. This is a Hard Luck King Firebird. And I refuse to play this guitar without this custom purple Strat by Couch Guitar Straps from Long Beach, California. I also play guitar in a band called Hollywood Apocalypse from Hollywood. And in that band, I play this green Telecaster from GNL. These are the two guitars I cannot live without. My name is Sky Livelihoods, and I am a Chief Guitar Officer.